Hi everyone, how are you? It's been a while since the last video, and obviously there's much to talk about. So let's talk about it. So the election was held last week, and from the looks of things, Biden will win not only the popular vote, but the electoral vote needed to become the next president. Yay! So 4 years ago in 2016, I watched the election results unfold. I could tell from the get-go that things didn't seem right. By 2:30 a.m., I was in bed with a depressing yet true realization that Donald Trump would become the 45th president of the United States. My mood has been very different this year as opposed to 2016. By the end of the election night, it was looking good for him. Although the election wasn't called on November 3rd as neither candidate gathered enough electoral votes, Biden was in a good position as many battleground states continued counting. Soon Biden had won Michigan and Wisconsin by some narrow margins reminiscent to Trump's victory in those states 4 years ago. Except this time, he was the one with the fewer votes. Once mail-in and absentee ballots began to be counted, Trump's leads began to disappear in states like Pennsylvania and Georgia. Now, as I'm recording this, it seems that Joe Biden will have 306 electoral college votes to Donald Trump's 232, making Joe Biden the 46th president of the United States come January of next year. I say this at a time, though, when Trump has yet to concede defeat and is in fact challenging the counting in many states. Although the messaging in each state is obviously not uniform. The Trump campaign is also suing state election boards on accusations of voter fraud, despite no evidence of fraud to be demonstrated. So let's move to the vote count and outline some interesting facts about the 2020 election. So in raw votes, i.e. the popular vote, Joe Biden has received over 80 million of them, the most votes any president received in history. Trump, meanwhile, got about 74 million votes. Not more than Biden, mind you, but still over 10 million more votes than he got in 2016, meaning more people actually voted for him now than 4 years ago. But he's still the first president to lose the popular vote twice, to be a one-term president, and to be also impeached.
We will have so much winning.
So what does this all mean exactly? Well, this is the part of the video where I indulge on my personal thoughts about this election, so are you ready to hear them? I bet you are. And depending on where you stand, this is where I expect many people to either like or dislike this video, or just tune out entirely to watch something more entertaining like Jake Paul knocking out Nate Robinson.
He's singing the hymns. He's trying to get
Jesus,
not my man, the problem child proven to be.
There, I just showed you it, so now you can stick around, okay? So here's what I think. A victory this narrow after 250,000 COVID deaths in a terrible economy against the most unpopular president in modern American history, this is an extremely bad sign for the Democratic Party. As of the day I'm recording this part, on 11/29, Democrats have won 222 seats in the 117th Congress, while Republicans have won 209, narrowing the Democrat majority from what it was at 232, with 3 races still to be determined. As for state and local elections, 86 of 99 state legislative chambers across 44 states held general elections on November 3rd. As a result of the 2020 elections, Republicans have so far gained trifectas, single-party control of the governorship in both state legislative chambers in 2 states, New Hampshire and Montana. As of November 11th, partisan control flipped in 2 chambers. Republicans gained majority in the New Hampshire House of Representatives and New Hampshire State Senate. Governor Chris Sununu won re-election. In Montana, Republicans maintained majorities in both legislative chambers, and Greg Gianfort, I'm terrible at names. Anyway, he won the gubernatorial race. So if this is a victory for the Democrats, God help them if they have a defeat. So who is the blame here? Well, many in the DNC are blaming the more left-leaning progressive wing of the party led by AOC for their losses. In a private conference call shared by the Washington Post, centrist members were blasting their liberal and leftist colleagues for pushing far-left views that cost the party seats in the election that they had worked so hard to win back in 2018. Party leaders had expressed certainty that Trump's divisiveness and mishandling of the pandemic would help them expand their majority with wins in GOP-held districts, and yet they lost over half a dozen seats and failed to retake the Senate. The explanation laid out by centrists, according to multiple people who were on the call and spoke on the condition of anonymity, is that the Republicans were easily able to paint them as socialists and radical leftists who endorsed far-left positions like defunding the police. Centrist Democrat and proud CIA official Abigail Spanberger, almost lost her re-election bid. She said, "If we are classifying Tuesday as a success, we will get torn apart in 2022.
Some of my colleagues were celebrating successes that I don't think that we should have been celebrating. I think that it's very, very clear that there are places for us to recognize that people don't always understand what Democrats are for.
Other Democrats argued that fighting between members needs to stop and that the party should not be open to leftist and socialist policies. In the aftermath of their unexpected losses, Democrats argued that the party needs to come to terms with a bigger problem. And that problem is, apparently, Republicans have successfully cast the most vulnerable Democrats as socialists and tied them to leftist ideas, including Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, and cutting police budgets. Like that's a bad thing.
I don't support taking money away from police departments. I do support ensuring that social services across our communities are strong. I do support a greater accountability in our law enforcement, as do law enforcement. And certainly the point of my comments were we need to talk about policies. I wasn't blaming any particular policy.
The attacks, moderates concluded, needed to be taken seriously, and the party needs to figure out ways to address them now ahead of the 2022 midterms. Issues presented by Black Lives Matter about police reform, talks about the Green New Deal, or Medicare for All should not take the forefront of the Democratic Party platform. But the narrative that Black Lives Matter and policies championed by Bernie Sanders and AOC almost cost the Democrats the election is arbitrary messaging. It's not an actual analysis. It's a call to action to attack and smear the left, and the knives are clearly out. Even former Republicans who have gravitated towards the Democratic Party have expressed concerns. Biden surrogate John Kasich states, the Democrats have to make it clear to the far left that they almost cost Joe Biden this election.
Now is the time for Democrats, and I believe Joe Biden will do this, to begin to listen to what the other half of the country has had to say. But we have to listen to what those folks, those Republicans, all across this country has had to say. The best thing that's happened to Joe Biden is the fact that the United States Senate is either going to be Republican or very close, and the far left can push him as hard as they want. And frankly, the Democrats have to make it clear to the far left that they almost cost him this election. And that congresswoman from Virginia warned the Democrats, you want to talk about defunding the police, you'll have no support. And I think this is an opportunity for Biden to talk about the center right and the center left of this country and what can be achieved. Because we have enormous problems with debt, Social Security, Medicare, health care.
Keep in mind when Kasich talks about the debt and addressing things like Medicare and Social Security, he means cutting them. Typical Republican lingo. But again, there's no actual evidence of left-wing rhetoric being an indicator of Democrats losing seats. And they certainly didn't lack funds or resources to push back those false narratives. The problem is not the policies Democrats adopted, it's really about the messaging. It shows how digital media advertising will never replace the grassroots organizing. People like John Kasich don't know what they're talking about. He got crushed by Trump in the 2016 Republican primaries, and he couldn't even deliver Ohio for Joe Biden this year. I mean, he ended up losing the state to Trump by 8 points. And he can be a political refugee from his party for the rest of his life for all I care. His isolation should serve as an indicator that his viewpoints are out of touch, especially among Democrats. Now, there clearly will be a fight going on in 2021 on what exactly the Democratic Party should stand for.
Throughout the 2020 election process, woke Twitter was destroyed when Joe Biden got the nomination, when the same Jim Clyburn was like, stop talking about defunding the police. He was saying that during the campaign, and that's one of the reasons why he supported Biden. But now you look at what's happened, and Americans are down the center. They just are. I know we talk about how deeply divided America is, but you look at some of the things that the far left wants. So here we are. This is the country that we have, whether people like it or not. In 2016, they took a chance on Donald Trump. figured, what do we have to lose?
Actually, the people who voted for both Mitt Romney in 2012 and Donald Trump in 2016 were a minority. So let's not assume the country is split down the middle. And it really annoys me that proponents of these narratives never bring up any hard data to support these claims. I suppose addressing policies on a case-by-case basis doesn't really fit well with the flowery narrative of coming together, as if all policies and positions can be reconciled with each other. Plus, I find it ironic for someone like Joe Scarborough to preach this type of rhetoric when he's never actually practiced it when he was a member of the House of Representatives, being Newt Gingrich's protege of political divisiveness and whatnot. The fact that the American public is split is not indicative of where the American people are. We got massive different beliefs being held in this country. This is like saying most Americans are actually in the middle when it comes to this COVID pandemic, because you have one side warning of the seriousness of it, while the other side is claiming it's just a hoax. So let's not pretend the majority of Americans hold moderate views in between these two positions. You either think the pandemic is real, or you don't. The pandemic isn't viewed on a spectrum where people try and find the middle ground here. You either are taking COVID-19 seriously, or you're fucking crazy.
In 2018, they said, we have a lot to lose. This guy's out of his freaking mind, and he's extreme. We're going to put Democrats in charge of the House and take away some Republican seats in the Senate to have a check on him, just as James Madison and the founders actually planned. 2020 comes along, and it looks like the decision they've made is, all right, listen, we're going to fire Donald Trump. We can't take this chaos anymore. But we want to keep the Republicans in control of the Senate, and we want to do that because we don't trust turning the whole thing over to the Democratic Party, because to tell you the truth, some of the things we hear, they sound a little crazy to us.
Excuse me, what? Does he think that the country all came together in order to invoke checks and balances on the president? Is that why he thinks they voted for Joe Biden but voted for Republicans in Congress? Of course not. They voted for people that spoke to them. And many voters thought Republicans were the only ones speaking to them because the Democrats lacked a coherent message, other than Orange Man bad. It's a binary choice, guys, and people will go to one side or the other based on who is conveying the message that resonates to the psyche of that individual experience of that person. So here's my hot take on all this. People are saying Biden won by having a moderate message, but there's little to no evidence at all Biden won because of that. Based on congressional race results alone, there's a good chance he would have won by a bigger margin by simply being bolder in his message. But instead, the Democrats nominated the furthest right-wing candidate. Yes, Joe Biden is even more right-wing than Hillary Clinton. The entire media apparatus was behind him. He ran on an anti-socialist campaign. He even invited Republicans to the DNC convention. Like, what the fuck, guys? What were you thinking? And yet people are still out there thinking, why did Biden underperform? I know, socialism must be to blame. You see, the leadership of the Democrat Party is just far more interested in healing its rift with the GOP than it is with its progressive flank that helped mobilize the winning vote. And to be sure, they are going in hard to discipline the left. This explains the Biden campaign trying to appeal to Republican voters and surrogates like John Kasich, while simultaneously criticizing the more progressive wing of the party. But here's the problem, people. The Biden Republican doesn't exist. The vast majority of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. In fact, more did so in this election than in 2016. The real issue here is that Democrats lost because they had no down-ballot strategy. They had no message that resonated with the masses, no field strategy, no vision. The national message was anti-Trump, and it worked to get Joe Biden elected, but at what cost? Trump being an extremely unpalatable person was the only problem Republicans had with him. So you can look forward to a much more sophisticated, nice opposition to the Green New Deal and Medicare for All in the future. The Biden campaign's greatest failure was running just against Donald Trump and not running against the Republican Party as a whole. Welcoming the Lincoln Project types into the fold and normalizing the GOP, separating them from Trump, allowed GOP members in Congress to get off the hook, a selfish strategy that ruined down-ballot races. Now, critics to my position will always try to whitewash the Republican Party, But remember, Trumpism is Republicanism. Republicans would do the same immoral, deranged policies implemented by Trump, even without him. They never disagreed with him on principle, just on methodology. And that mindset won't change when he's gone. My greatest hope is that Biden's disappointing performance in the future will help convince voters that moderate candidates aren't a real solution to our problems. The fact that the election was so close should be a clear indicator that Democrats are not connecting material conditions that many Americans are facing. Things like an economic depression, a global pandemic, low wages, a lower standard of living, to the consequences of politics, which is an abysmal failure on their part.
Democrats don't do a good job of speaking to working class people. What do you say to that? You're supposed to be fixing that.
I had that experience countless times on the trail, Don, where I would say, hey, I'm running for president, to a truck driver, retail worker, a waitress in a diner, and they would say, what party? And I say Democrat, and they would flinch, like I'd said something really negative, or I just had turned another color or something like that. And there's something deeply wrong when working class Americans have that response to a major party that theoretically is supposed to be fighting for them. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life that has been declining for years. And so if you're in that situation, this to me is a fundamental problem for the Democratic Party, because if they don't figure this out, then this polarization and division will get worse, not better.
Is that real, or messaging, or both?
It's real. I mean, Debbie just said they lost a plant that had 1,500 workers. And so if you're a laid off worker from that plant and you look up and say, what is the Democratic Party doing for me? It's unclear. And we can talk about a unifying message from Joe Biden. He's a naturally very unifying figure. But then there's the reality on the ground where their way of life has been disintegrating for years. And if we don't address that, then you're going to see a continued acceleration toward the institutional mistrust that animated the Trump vote and will continue to do so.
But also, maybe many Americans are not realizing the consequences of those politics either. That means Democrats need to have a more effective message that resonates with these people.
January 5th, this election also the culmination on the Democratic side of 4 years of activism.
Absolutely, and I think we need to continue that. You know, I think this is a great time for the Democratic Party to hit the reset button. Let's go back to our roots. Organizing is our foundation. Remember the big wave of 2008 that came from a strong organizing foundation built by Barack Obama? Let's continue to build on that. Let's talk to our voters consistently. Let's, as President-elect said last night, let's make real the promises that we have made to the base of the party who has been with us, who showed up through a pandemic. Let's make sure that we recognize that before we go out and start, trying to build this huge coalition. Let's show the folks who showed up that we love them, and let's continue to stay consistent. I do want to push back a little bit on the flip situation. We won a lot of seats last cycle, and Republicans got some of those back. But I do believe in places where we were true to our mission, we won. For instance, the progressives who were in swing seats all won. But the moderates who were in swing seats didn't. And I think part of that is we didn't make our message clear enough. Go with what you know. Go with talking about serving real people. You can do that in moderate districts, and it doesn't have to feel extreme. It just says, I'm here for you and I represent you. That is the foundation of the People's House.
For example, the Democrat Socialist branch of the party just got bigger, with 28 of the 37 national DSA candidates winning their elections. So compare a 76% win rate to the Democrat establishment's success with their milquetoast candidates, and you'll see some interesting results. And every Democrat running on Medicare for All won re-election. Everyone that didn't lost. Look, if you want to win working class voters of all races, treat them like ordinary people with real issues. Treat them with respect. Offer to make their lives materially better. It's not that hard. As Abigail Spanberger puts it,
what I'm worried about is our ability to do things for the American people. Our ability to get our economy back on track, our ability to fight this virus aggressively. And if we do the policy right and we communicate it well, then I think the electoral success follows.
Now, anyone continually saying that it was the left's fault Biden almost lost after the fact that immigrant organizers delivered Arizona for him, African-American grassroots efforts helped flip Georgia, and volunteer help led by Rashida Tlaib in Michigan and Ilhan Omar in Minnesota contributed both states to go for Biden clearly don't know what they're talking about. In fact, it was through those efforts that Joe Biden's bid for presidency was probably saved. So to all my centrist friends and Democrat representatives that lack any clear, coherent message for their constituents now, since, you can't use Orange Man bad anymore, let me make something perfectly clear. The progressive left put differences aside and worked incredibly hard to get Joe Biden elected. Well, the ones that decided to vote anyway.
So all of that happened at the DNC at the expense of progressives, I'm not saying you don't pull Republican in, the never Trump Republicans, but you don't do that at the expense of your base, of your progressive base. And that is exactly what happened. The Lincoln Project, I agree with Sirota and company, epic fail. $40 million raised for these folks to try to pull out the elusive Biden Republican that does not damn exist. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, all over this country, neoliberals just said the hell with progressives, suck it up, fall in line, just dribble the ball. Does that sound familiar? Again, no political mandate, but a moral mandate must be met.
2022 is just 2 years away. And if you want to keep folks energized and mobilized, maybe you shouldn't blame the people who helped you the most in your tough races. Otherwise, you may be left to the mercy of the resurgent Republicans. So speaking of Republicans, let's talk about them really quickly. So even though Trump seems to be on his way out, the Republican Party managed to gain seats in the House of Representatives, state governments, and even main control of the United States Senate. More on that one soon, just stick with me, okay? So it seems pretty perplexing that the GOP could do that. Well, maybe not if you saw the Biden strategy of separating Donald Trump from the Republican Party. So the Republicans without Trump may feel emboldened now since even though they lost the presidency, they picked up seats in the House, have a majority in the Supreme Court, and will keep control of the Senate if both Georgia Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler win their elections against their Democratic challengers John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. So if either Perdue or Loeffler win, Mitch McConnell will remain majority leader. If they both lose, the Senate will have a 50-50 split, with VP Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, giving the Democrats control. So you can look forward to the Georgia runoff election becoming another national election. The eyes of the country will be on you, Georgia. We'll be watching you. No pressure, am I right? But let's suppose that the Republicans maintain the Senate for the sake of argument. Get ready for gridlock then, because despite the fact that Trump is gone, don't expect the political division to disappear. You know what's the problem with all this, and why I feel so bittersweet about this whole election? It's just the general frustration of American politics. So, what can we do right now to help cure this ailment and relieve our post-election blues? How about some schadenfreude? Remember all those MAGA people who were all like, fuck your feelings, that craved liberal tears? Well, it seems now the tables have turned. So let's just put aside the election for now. How about we sit back, have ourselves a beer and enjoy the sweet bliss of MAGA Coke.
Show me a swing state legislator and I'll show you a traitor, regardless of party affiliation. You owe these people nothing, they owe you everything. Make their lives miserable, ignore the counting centers, protest at their residence.
Rigged. I absolutely don't want to live in this nation where our great President Trump is getting robbed. This is absolutely the final straw. My kids are in danger and I won't live in this nation another day. I'm moving to Alaska and finally leaving the USA. Trump has 88 million Twitter followers and got 69 million votes. Biden has 13 million Twitter followers and he got 72 million votes. Isn't that interesting? You fucking ruined everything. Biden has fucking won and it's all your fucking fault. Third party has never, ever fucking won, you stupid cocksucker piece of fucking shit.
Why can't the leftists just let racists like me go live in peace somewhere and not mess with us? I don't want to mess with them. I just want to be left alone. Please, just let us have like a single state to ourselves or something, and stop forcing their ideology that is diametrically opposed to my own on me. There's no reason to resist now that degeneracy has won. Where do I buy estrogen?
If you're a young male who voted for Trump, this will be the only way to survive the Biden presidency. They will be looking for you. Get a wig, a cute dress, some nice jewelry, a few makeup tutorials, and lay low for the next 4 to 8 years.
I'm so fucking depressed. I think I'm gonna transition, bros. It feels so weird to say it. I've wanted to be a girl for years, but held back because I thought Donald Trump would make suppressing it worthwhile by making America great again. But he's gone now. Why stay a man? Biden will continue to push trans rights to their extremes. There's no point fighting anymore. My future is female.
Wow, a lot of eggs had to be cracked to make that copium omelet.
Since the globalist elites have won and there's no hope left, I decided to just take the pink pill and transition. At least this way, when the re-education camps come, I can just tell them I'm a and they'll let me go.
Damn, so much insecurity going on right now.
I will not give not one red dime to you Republican losers that throws the president under the bus. I will not contribute to people that don't represent the majority. This election was a fraud, and all you Republicans now, but sit on your knees and kiss the Democrats' ass.
Prepare for a fine November! When your enemies lie bloody and broken before you, know that I will be watching. The pathetic weaklings that compromise the GOP deserve to suffer.
The media said what? The media said Joe Biden's president. I mean, the liberal media is biased. We just want our president, America. Democrats did bad things, 1800s, racist, walk away. George Soros, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and trust the plan. Do your own research. You know what I mean? Thank you. Yeah, we're not.
Donald Trump is a genius. That's what the J stands for.
Everyone calm down. Q literally predicted this. He said Trump would lead when the polls close. Then he said overnight shenanigans would lead to Biden leading. Then that leads to the final battle between Trump and them.
Joe Biden has won the American presidential election. The BBC projects that he's crossed the threshold of 270 electoral college votes needed with a win.
No will!
Give us our freedom, Joe Biden! Joe Biden's covering up this election! He's stealing it!
Where were we? What was the last question?
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? A lot of these people are going to need some time, it seems. And we can tell from people like Cassandra Fairbanks, some have opted cope for just having spiteful revenge. Also, many Trump supporters just can't be compelled to exhibit normal human emotions like sadness and even crying over their side losing, because that's some soy boy cuck shit. Instead, they feel compelled to engage in acts of terrorism. And as we can also see, the pent-up anger can make them even more susceptible to fascism.
We have been cheated over and over and over. Go ahead. My brothers and sisters, in these uncertain times, we must remember family comes from the blood that courses through our veins. For centuries, parasites have poisoned our minds with the lie that our enemies are our brothers with different labels, but our enemies manufactured both. These rats in human disguise and their puppets revel in watching us kill ourselves. We will not fall for their evil tricks again. We will not fall for the lies of the Jews this time. This time we know our war is with them. USA! 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 USA!
Or just outright Nazi. Now, it seems a bit too early to determine the future of the Republican Party from all this. Will it be a party that rejects the rhetoric that Donald Trump espoused in order to reinvent itself, more inclusive and less, well, fascist in its appeal? Or will it stay the course? Well, time will tell. In the meanwhile, however, keep your eye on that QAnon group, because they're on track to be the new Tea Party of the 2020s. That is to say, the Tea Party on crack. The future looks so bright. But I think what so many people miss out is the fact that just because we defeated Trump, that doesn't mean we defeated Trumpism and all the principles and policies it represents. Like, I feel people envision Donald Trump as the Night King, and all we needed to do was just defeat him, and all his followers would just magically disappear. The reality is, his supporters are still around. They live amongst us, folks, and they'll glob onto the next politician that can pick up the mantle of Trump's legacy. We've treated the symptom. We haven't cured the disease that's consuming this nation. And that disease is the neoliberal society that has created the material conditions for many Americans to turn to people like Trump. And if the rate of this economic decay continues, or if it's at least not mitigated, more and more people will be disaffected. Who will they turn to then? The United States of America will be the country that made Donald Trump its president, and it always will be. And right now, there is nothing embedded or inherent in the nation that would inhibit a person like Donald Trump or American fascism to make a comeback again. I mean, literally, Trump could run again in 2024. Let's not talk about that right now. What I want you to think about is what you can do to help the cause that will defeat American fascism where it stands. Because I hate to break it to you folks who believe electing Joe Biden means America will go back to normal. America's not going back to normal. That slogan is just an appeal to nostalgia of an era that ironically isn't that long ago, but has been decaying from the inside for quite some time. It was only outwardly shown by the election of Donald Trump. There are people who want to go back to sleep and ironically think that Donald Trump was nothing but a bad dream. He's gone now. We don't have to worry about him. He was nothing more than a bug, not a feature of our current system. The reality is our system gave us Trump. And now it's replaced Trump with a man who will unlikely demand much attention from an exhausted and divided public, but will most likely fall short in addressing their material needs. I mean, the after effects of this COVID pandemic should show people there is no going back to normal. And we should compel people from not going back to sleep. In many ways, this is the new normal. The solution isn't looking to emulate a time in the past, but to move forward and work for a better future. It's actually about reforming and changing the climate that was considered normal, because the normal so many pundits chime on gave us, many Americans, stagnant wages and widening wealth inequality. Normal was fighting wars based on lies, economic recessions, political corruption. Normal was the illusion that this system was made with you in mind and not for the people who have the most money. This is what normal means to many Americans.
Commentator on CNN said, maybe you could finally get back to normal. And when I hear things like maybe we could finally get back to normal, I think, what was your normal? What was normal for you? Because when Barack Obama was president, I was marching for Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner, fresh out of college. So it's like, what was your normal? It was never okay. We had people calling the first lady a monkey. Is that the normal we're talking about? Is that what we're going back to? I'm confused. I don't understand.
If someone that you don't know is wearing black and comes
it's sad
up to you,
that everyone just kind of feels like we've reached a point where we're like done. Like he's out of office. The work is done. And it's just so many people out here who the work was never finished. It was never done. We still in the streets.
People need to remember that normal gave us Trump. That being asleep and not alert to the many problems facing this country made this country more susceptible to fascism. Now beating fascism is going to take more than just voting every few years. It's going to take constant engagement. Not with just the disaffected, the political, the cynical, or the disgruntled, but even the MAGA people too. It's about changing minds and giving support. It's about growing a community in order to build a larger movement that can serve as a counterweight to right-wing populism and its appeal.
What Joe Biden does, the way you do that is to say black and white and Latino. Do you think we should be raising the minimum wage to a living wage? Yeah, we do. Do you think we should guarantee health care to all people? Yeah, we do. Do you think we should deal with climate change and create millions of jobs as we transform our energy system? Should we create jobs rebuilding our infrastructure? Ali, there are so many issues out there that can bring our people together. And that is what I think we have got to do as a nation. We have to go in by issue after issue. So I say to the Republicans, people who voted for Trump who are watching this program, are you really happy that a handful of people on top who are making billions more during this pandemic now own more wealth than the bottom half of American society? Are you happy that your kid is working for $9 an hour and can't afford to go to college? Are you happy that thousands of veterans in this country are sleeping out on the street? You know what the answer is? No. You know, Donald Trump says people love their private health insurance. I have not talked to too many people who love their private health insurance. In fact, they detest the insurance companies because they get ripped off every single day. So we got to talk about and explain.
And I say it's imperative because sooner or later, it will be 2022 and then 2024. And you can rest assured that the other side will not be licking their wounds forever. They will be back. And will the left be stronger? Will we even be ready? It's just something to think about. See you in the next video.